Something Borrowed, Something Blue, Part 2 is the 24th and final episode of Season 7 of Frasier. And I'd seen it before, I knew what was going to happen, and regardless, I basically sobbed all of the way through. It is such an incredible roller coaster. It's amazing, it's frustrating, it's such a powerful episode. So, as always, there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode chronologically and share some thoughts. On the one hand, I have a lot of thoughts. On the other, I don't. I have mostly emotions. And ultimately, it's incredible. We're now at the venue for Daphne and Donny's wedding, and Daphne tells Frasier that it was just wedding jitters, how she was feeling about Niles. She's going ahead with the wedding. She seems generally in good spirits. And then her mother arrives and changes that. Her mother is played by Millicent Martin, and she's a brilliant character, but it really explains why Daphne gets frustrated whenever she's on the phone with her. And then we have the rehearsal dinner. Martin and Frasier are talking, and it really highlights just how complicated this whole situation is. But as Martin points out, there are two marriages at stake. We know, they know, Daphne and Niles are clearly meant to be together. Niles is just married Mel. Daphne is literally just about to get married. It is such a mess. And then Daphne and Niles are dancing, and it's heartbreaking. It's really challenging to watch. And then Frasier talks with Niles and tells Niles that Daphne knows. And I'd kind of forgotten that Niles was really the only person not really aware of everybody being aware of everything else. And obviously, he starts to panic. And then people start coming into the room, and then Daphne comes in. He talks with Daphne, and it's just the two of them. And Daphne gets annoyed that Frasier had spoken with Niles because obviously it's making things more complicated. But then Niles says, "I'm glad he told me because I love you." And Martin comes in, and then Martin leaves, and then somebody else comes in, and it just gets really chaotic, and Niles is saying all the right things. Donny comes in, and it's funny. People coming in and out, they're saying funny things. We're getting the mood lifted a little bit, but it's still really challenging to watch. And Niles says to Daphne, and I love and hate this. I love it because I believe it. I believe every word he's saying, but I hate it because it's just so messy. It's just an awful situation for everybody because he says to her, "Say the word and I will leave Mel in a heartbeat." As much as I don't like Mel, that's obviously not a nice thing for Mel to experience. If Niles were to turn around and say, "Sorry, we've been married for 3 days or however long it's been, but actually I've been in love with Daphne this whole time. It was never really you I wanted." That's going to sting, no matter how much I don't care for Mel. That's going to be hurtful. So it's such a mess. And then all of Daphne's family arrives. And Daphne and Niles are outside, and Niles is just talking and talking and talking because Daphne's not saying anything really. And then she kisses him. And I think that was the first time I really started to cry because it was beautiful. It's a long time coming. And then they just pull the rug from underneath us and we collapse and crumble again because she says, no, she can't do this. They're giving it to us and then they're taking it away. And it's an absolute roller coaster. And she says, "Good night, Dr. Crane." And that Dr. Crane, more than any other Dr. Crane Daphne has uttered, really, really stung. Because it's like she was drawing a line under it and saying, no, I cannot and will not call you Niles. You will always be only Dr. Crane to me. And it stung. It really, really did. And then we have the final scene. And Niles is clearly in a lot of pain. He's in the Winnebago, and Martin and Frasier come to give him a bit of company. They go to drink Maury's wine, but it turns out he'd kept it in the boiler room, so it wasn't as nice as they expected. And they leave, and then Daphne comes in her dress, and she looks beautiful. It's really, really gorgeous. And I feel like I can't remember how I felt the first time I saw this episode. But if you're watching it for the first time, I think it would be not unreasonable to assume that Daphne is just coming to say hello before she gets married. But actually, she says to him, she says, "I was wondering if you might be free for a date." And it's the most beautiful words Daphne has ever uttered. Now, I'm not saying I agree with what she's doing, nor am I agreeing with what Niles did, but she sat down and off they went in the Winnebago. And that's how we end things. I don't agree with fleeing on your wedding day. I don't agree that Niles was so willing to take her from her wedding because Donny's going to be hurt by this. But at the same time, I need Daphne and Niles to be together, and it was absolutely beautiful. And it's just a tremendous roller coaster and heartbreaking. But obviously, at the end, all of those emotions are just shoved aside as there's just this immense relief. But I think there's also an element of, is this going to work? Will she change her mind? It's obviously nothing is final. The wedding day is still happening. It's still there. It's still in the background. It's not disappeared. So there is this immense relief, but nothing is certain still. And I have to say, it's an incredibly powerful way to end a season. I don't know if they'd been commissioned for the next season at this point. I would imagine they probably had been. But if not, then that was a very strong way to almost guarantee that they were going to get another season, because who wouldn't be desperate to know what happens next? It's a beautiful episode. It's a difficult episode to watch, but it feels like just everything has been building up towards this, particularly this season. But in a way, for Niles at least, everything over the last 7 seasons, it's all been leading up to this moment for Niles. And I think they executed it absolutely perfectly. And yeah, even though I knew what was coming at the end of this episode, even though I knew that she would turn things around, that Daphne would turn things around, all of those times she rejected Niles, said she can't do this, it was just horrible. Absolutely horrible, but in the most brilliantly crafted way possible. So, needless to say, Something Barred, Something Blue Part 2 is a challenging emotional experience because it's so powerful, such a strong episode, and obviously an immense relief that we get to move forward with this, and an immense relief that Niles just finally knows, because we've been chipping away and chipping away at this, and I'm also really glad to have finally reached this episode, because it's been really difficult to discuss Niles and Daphne when I've been reviewing or rewatching the show, because obviously I knew this was coming. I'd seen it before, and whenever I've been talking about Daphne and Niles, it's been really difficult to not give anything away, and I hope I haven't given anything away. But I'm also very relieved that this is finally here, that it's finally arrived, and I feel a lot. I felt a lot. It's an emotional episode, but it's beautiful. Something Borrowed, Something Blue Part 2 is pretty perfect.